This is basically, when we were talking about this panel beforehand, we thought we would explore kind of the implications of blockchain beyond cryptocurrency. But just to get a sense of the room, I kind of want to understand how many people here feel like they understand blockchain well enough that they could like explain it to other people. Okay, so a little less than half. Okay, good. So that kind of gives us a barometer for where to talk. I want to start by just opening the conversation by asking, blockchain has come up alongside Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is the flag bearer, right? And it's this currency, and we all understand that at this point. But what, in your opinions, is the critical innovation behind blockchain? What is it that makes that interesting? And anyone can start.
I'll start.
And tell us why we're listening to you two, by the way. Just introduce yourself in like a sentence.
I'm Steve. Oh, why you should listen to me?
Yeah.
Because I spend all day looking at blockchains. My name is Steve Hopkins. I'm the COO and General Counsel of Medici Ventures. We're a VC/incubator that only invests in blockchain. Our core values are basically to democratize capital, eliminate middlemen, and rehumanize commerce by advancing blockchain technology. That's our thinking. So you'll assume probably that I think it's worthwhile. The unique innovation of the blockchain is really very simple. Just like the internet and email made it possible for us to send exact copies of anything costlessly around the world, blockchain takes it one step further and allows you to now reintroduce a unique asset and send it costlessly around the world. So instead of wondering if is this picture the original or is this a digital copy, and not being able to tell at all the difference between the two, you can tell exactly which picture or which asset is the one that you want. And so this ability to take a unique asset and move it around the world and know that it's the only one, and if I tell you I own something, to know that I actually own it because I can sign it with the right cryptographic key, I think that's the thing that makes blockchain special.
Do you both agree with that? Did he nail it? Or is there?
I'll give a different perspective. So I'm Christophe Jospe, co-founder of Nori. We're delusional enough to have reversing climate change on the back of our business cards. And we say that because we see the opportunity to issue a cryptocurrency that creates a new incentive to draw carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And the last two books I read are sort of coloring my thinking. One of them, David Grinspoon, Earth in Human Hands. I want to read this quote. "What makes us human is our ability to work together to modify our environment in creative ways powered by abstract thinking." And so if you think about humans creating market incentives to do new innovative things, we can create a whole new incentive structure to drive behavior that couldn't have previously existed even 2 years ago. So the fact that whole new business models can open up, and then that data is cryptographically secured and people can trust it, and it's append only and all these great things that just disintermediate and interoperate and all the other
that was a lot
buzzwords.
Of like multi-syllabic words right there. Can you do the plain English version of that answer? Like
so get rid of the middlemen. I think middlemen are good in some cases, but sometimes have more power than necessarily they deserve.
Okay.
So if you're doing an activity on one side and on the other side you want to pay for that activity, if the way that activity can generate data that can be collected and trusted by the person who wants to pay that activity, and a market operator can enable that transaction as seamlessly as possible, blockchain technology is an ideal solution for that.
Yeah, so get rid of the middleman. There's a trust innovation, or it's identify a unique digital asset. Do you have a third perspective on the question, or did we cover it?
Is there more? Yes, I think there is more, actually.
Yeah.
I'm Bill Soward from Titan Seal. We use the blockchain to digitally certify government records, other important documents, and credentials. I think that, it's just, on one part, just expanding on what they're talking about, you have in a global world, the next logical step is really point-to-point interaction, transactions, and whatnot, and I think the blockchain makes that possible because the party on the left side and the party on the right side don't need to know each other, and in the past we've had an intermediary that's getting paid in some form to be able to assure the trust of both sides. And in a blockchain world fully deployed, you don't need the intermediary. You eliminate that friction, which ultimately should produce a higher velocity in terms of just the way that business gets done. So I think that's very encouraging from a short-term perspective, and that comes with an audit path that's verifiable, it's completely transparent, and so in that sense, that's almost better than what we have today when it's fully deployed. I think the long-term question mark is the blockchain infrastructure also becoming potentially a world computing platform, and sort of AWS for the rest of us. And I think it's too early to know whether that is ultimately can scale in that direction, but that's a potential that's out there, and each successive iteration of the blockchain gets better and better, and so we'll see where that goes.
I think so. I want to take, that's actually a nice way to move us towards, so these are some interesting sort of ground layer innovations that are driving blockchain. Just to kind of test the limits, I want to start at the outside and say, okay, let's go all the way to utopia and dystopia, right? Like, so if everything goes right or if everything goes wrong, like, what are the boundaries of our imagination at the moment of what this could lead to, right? And then I want to back into sort of practical what we're doing now, like the kinds of things you're seeing. But like, is there something on any of your lists where you just go, God, it would be utopia if we could actually get to this implementation using blockchain. We can't do it now, but oh man, it would be awesome.
Let me start with that. I mean, I think one aspect that other companies here have talked about is sort of the future of having a wallet, a digital wallet that contains all of your credentials, all your key documents. That future where you can control who sees what and when, you own your own data, not some third party, not some institution, but you own your own data, is a very, very powerful concept. And so of course, a company like ours, we're at the front end of that, trying to create the documents that end up going into that wallet of the future, because you need to have the content, essentially. But that future where you control your own data could transform a lot of things, and that would be very, very powerful in terms of dealing with privacy issues and imagine just sort of different levels of credentials based on who's asking for what and why.
Why is that a blockchain thing and not something that can happen without it?
Well, I think it goes back to some of the earlier benefit statements about sort of the implied security of parties who don't know each other, and how the infrastructure and the immutability of it allows you to be able to do this in a kind of a trusted way without having the institution in the middle. And see, today the problem as an individual is the institution is in the middle, and therefore they are controlling your data. And if they're doing it, then who knows what they're doing with it, which is, of course, a series of unfortunate events today, right?
So to give my utopia, I think, well, I said I've read 2 books recently. The other one to add to your reading list is Rethinking Money, written by Bernard Letelier. Can't pronounce that. He helped design the euro. And the argument there is actually that more currencies and localized currencies that enable cooperation is a good thing. So my utopia would be that there are more cryptocurrencies that are incentivizing behavior that contribute to societal or environmental benefits, whether that's things like cleaning up the ocean, pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, knowledge sharing, all of these great things. I think the dystopia is we just continue to have white guys on a panel talking about jargony things, and it's not an inclusive industry. So I really hope that it doesn't contribute to just huge Bitcoin mining operations. I mean, if you think about how much energy right now is consumed to discover and cryptographically secure the Bitcoin network, it's about equivalent to what the country of France consumes in a year. So it's kind of an astronomical energy consumption. So a dystopia would be, we're generating all these sort of fancy distributed ledgers that don't produce societal or environmental value.
Well, now, didn't you have something to say about energy use and blockchain? I think it was you on the call who was saying.
No, I was thinking more on some other things, but I'll comment on that if you like.
Yeah, go for
it. I think that the real question in blockchain, that energy use is worth it if you put a lot of stuff on the blockchain. If the blockchain's securing everyone's ID and it's securing a number of other business activities, then it's a small cost for doing all that. But the problem is right now all it's doing is a payment system, And, and this is actually my dystopia. We have this really cool innovation and we build it into the exact same thing that existed before. And that's exactly one of the risks, that's one of the biggest risks we have is we have this centralized monetary system where governments control money, and it's really hurting a lot of people who can't get a bank account. They can't even do business on the internet without Bitcoin. If you're somebody who doesn't have a credit card. And all of the people in this room probably don't understand that problem. But if you live in South America, we have one of our companies in South America has, in Argentina, there's about 70% of people who just don't have a bank account. So how do they buy anything over the internet? They can't without something like Bitcoin. But the real risk is we end up, if you look at what's happening with cryptocurrency, it's all kind of loaded onto centralized exchanges. Everything bad you can think of about Bitcoin, it's happening because we're just copying the world we're trying to disrupt. And those centralized exchanges get hacked. And with ID, like Bill was saying, that's the dystopia. Is when Facebook has all that's the other one, we're already here. When Facebook has all my information and then somebody steals it, and then the only way I can prove on me is to know absolutely more trivia than everybody else has already stolen about me, right? This idea that my mother's maiden name is secure because why? Because no one else cares about it. And so you have this whole string of things about your first pet and your favorite teacher in grade school, and that's not real identity.
Okay, but pretend I'm a golden retriever and tell me again, why is a blockchain solution to that? Sorry to harp on this, but I just don't get it.
I think that's a good question. The reason a blockchain solution is so good is because you can create unique assets. And so when I sign something, it was me who said, I can prove that it was me. But I can do that with PGP. ID.
Like I can do that with a pretty good privacy, public. I can sign an email and you can know it's me because it's got my.
Well, but I can have a token from the Utah Drivers Division of Motor Vehicles that says I can operate a car. Or I can have a token, I can pick that and then I control that. And instead of every time I walk into a bar, I have to show them my driver's license, my picture, my address, that I'm, my birthday, all this information about me. All they really need to know is I'm 21. And I can just prove that I'm 21. And so you get control of your privacy back. I think that's what Bill's hinting at. And that's a real utopian. If you get self-sovereign identity, the blockchain is the place where you could do it. And that's actually really a valuable add.
Cool. Hey, good answer. So now I want to tease out something, maybe either Christophe, Gary? Bill.
Yeah.
I should know my panelists' names. Could dig into is we've referenced a few times the blockchain, but of course that's not how it is. It's not like there's the blockchain. Blockchain is a technology implementation. There are lots of blockchains, and in fact there are public and private blockchains. Like what does that kind of mean for the future of this technology? What are the different things that are enabled by those sort of different blockchains and different ways of thinking about them?
I'll start and punt it to you, Bill. Blockchain technology, quite frankly, is boring, and I look forward to the day where it's so boring that no one's talking about it, where people are talking about is what are the implications of this technology. All it is a distributed stored ledger that can't be changed or hacked, and then it's cryptographically secured in different ways. So we talked about Bitcoin, which has proof of work. There are other ideas to secure that through proof of authority, where maybe you have companies like IBM that are securing the hyperledger with other consortium partners, which say we have the authority to say this data is true. You have ideas around proof of stake, where different participants in the network stake the security of blockchain. But that's really all it is.
I think so, yeah. I just was thinking here that, even in today's cloud world, there's lots of different cloud platforms. And in some cases those are private, some cases those are public, and in some cases they interoperate, in some cases they don't. And I suppose that blockchain infrastructure sort of takes on similar attributes over time. And we see a lot of infrastructures being built out now that are sort of better than the one before. So, like our application today is on Ethereum, which is a better thing to be on than, the original blockchain. But it's probably still flawed in many ways. And so, we think about portability to other future platforms. And so it goes. And so you can imagine a future that if you're just looking at it from an infrastructure standpoint, that it sort of logically evolves to a shorter list of sort of the mainstream platforms that are fully supported but are as open as possible, and so it's kind of like Linux in a way, right?
Yeah.
And you want developers making it better and better all the time to share with everybody. So,
cool. So let's dive into the interesting stuff. Let's dive into the implementations, right? We got, what do you think, Christophe, is the most interesting outside of your own company, which is like cheating? You can't just answer with that. What is the most interesting implementation when you think of, the interesting stuff that you were just talking about?
Sure. I knew this question was coming, and so I should have prepared for it because I'm drawing a blank on the name of this company, but it has a token that incentivizes people who collect trash, which would end up in the ocean. And so it's creating value out of nothing, and it's this new currency. So people collect the plastic waste. Plastic waste doesn't go to the ocean, which everyone agrees is a good thing. That gets paid out, and it's sort of an incentivized model through a structure that basically weighs the plastic and says, here's the appropriate amount of cryptocurrency that pays you for that.
I guess a couple of things. One that's sort of intriguing to me is just the proof of origin. And I think whether it's blood diamonds or it's fair trade coffee beans, or even the I suppose the content of a piece of produce, and to be able to tie it back to its source and understand sort of what it is, and as it moves around, the supply chain, ensuring that you know what the origin of it was. I think that's a really powerful concept.
Sure. And I'm guessing that, I don't know where Evan is, but there's that whole article that I just read about how, the China hardware supply chain hack, this might be relevant for that, maybe? Do you know about this? Anyways,
sure.
we can bug Evan about it later.
Nothing to do with blockchain.
But yeah, no, that's so, and it's similar to the idea of, being able to secure a digital asset. You can do it with the physical world too. There's an interrelation between the two of them.
That's right.
What about you? Is there anything that we haven't covered that you're looking at?
I think there's probably two. No, just so you know, we've invested in 20 companies, so I'm always going to give you one of my companies.
Great.
I'm sorry. The two areas that I think are really, really going, the near term, the most important one is voting. Everybody's worried about interference in elections, and when all of a sudden you take voting and you put it on a blockchain, you have this ability to both know that your vote was counted as cast. You can prove that it actually was, you can count exactly how many people voted. And so now the Democrats and Republicans both, who play all sorts of games about how many people are voting and whether they're real voters, whatever, you can know how many people voted exactly. A recount takes about a second. And we've invested in two different voting companies. One of them is called Votes with a Z. They're running all the mobile voting and overseas voting for West Virginia's midterm election here in November. And this is, I think, a really great use of a secure over the internet interaction. The other one that I would say is capital markets. Dole Foods had a class action. Basically, they had to pay all their shareholders after they took them private, $2, something like that. They said, how many shareholders do you have? They said 36 million. The court says, so everybody submit your claims if you own Dole stock. This is January 2017. 45 million claims. They were all facially valid, but because of that 3 days between execution and settlement, and the ability of people to short stock and maybe not settle, and there was 9 million just made up phantom shares in the thing, and they couldn't even figure out who to pay. With blockchain, you can make the execution of the trade and the settlement of the trade almost simultaneously. It won't be 3 microseconds, which is what NASDAQ told me they needed to make it really work. But within minutes, you have the trades and settled. And so that adds trillions of dollars of liquidity to the economy, and there's several really big companies going after it really hard right now.
That's cool. That's a unique and interesting problem. So just curious, why 3 microseconds is what they needed for it to work?
That's because the real high frequency computer trading is done
to keep pace at that.
But see, then if we do that, and so you think about how many times the stock has been traded before it even settles once. and so what ends up happening is there's all sorts of room for price and other manipulation. And we have this thing, just bear with me. Anybody here own common stock in a public company and think they actually own the stock? Okay, yeah, good, thanks. Don't make me call you out. The fact is, it's owned by a company called Seed and Company, and then the DTC trades IOUs based on that, and then all the brokers trade IOUs, and so your 2 or 3 IOUs are removed away from the stock, telling your street name, unless you actually get a share issued to you, which is rare,
So I want to ask a question at this point, one more question of the group, and then we'll have time for people, we'll have a few minutes left for people to ask at the mic if they have questions. I'm curious, this session was sort of, I think, designed to allow people in the room to kind of wrap their brains around what are things outside of currencies that this technology, allows. And from that perspective, what's a takeaway that you would like people in the room to get from this session, from your perspective? And I know I don't like to go down the line, so I'm not going to go down the line. Just drop in.
Means you first.
Just drop in when you want. What's your?
My takeaway is I think that we can take out a lot of these institutions that are in between each other and start doing deals directly with each other. It kind of rehumanizes commerce. I like that. That's what's cool about blockchain, and it's trusted. And so I don't have to, when I sell you my car, wonder if your check is really going to cash, or if you don't.
Is this going to bounce?
Do I really own the car?
Yeah.
Well, I think someone earlier said that they thought the blockchain was kind of in the preseason, or it wasn't even the first inning. So it is pretty early still, but I think there is a there. It kind of feels like the internet in 1994, maybe. And so it's the beginning of the beginning, but there's something about this that is different and going to be highly disruptive. So, it's really, you have to think about it independently. The coin aspect of it and infrastructure obviously interrelate, but they're also separate things, and they may go at different speeds.
The one takeaway, I guess, is outside of, I think cryptocurrencies, when they're asset-backed, are a good thing, although there are a lot of scam coins, so stay away from those. But we're talking about storing data on a distributed ledger, and if it's garbage in, garbage out, then the ledgers know better. So I think the real question is not how do we use blockchain, but how do we collect data in a transparent, trustable way so people are on the same page, so things that do ultimately get stored, that makes peer-to-peer transactions more efficient, like how can we build that? I like to say, Nori, we're a blockchain company, but if you think of a whole pizza, it's just one pizza slice is the smart contract code. Like a lot of it's just software that makes the user experience friendly and beautiful so people can trust this thing. And how much do we abstract versus like, do you need to be a custodian of your own keys, or are we going to do this on your behalf? And these like geeky questions that have nothing to do with blockchain, just getting data collected in a good way. Could
I just jump in on that? Because you just reminded me of something that we didn't talk about in terms of benefits. The smart contract allows for really enforceability of the ground rules for whatever the deal was in the first place. And that's kind of interesting.
So we have 4 minutes. Just go for it. There you go. Now we can hear you.
Am I just crazy in this, but I think you all are, when you're asking questions like what is the importance of this, maybe overlooking just an incredible importance if I'm understanding it at all. Haven't you introduced something that actually provides truth? Unattackable truth? What could be more valuable than that? I would think that would change the world totally.
I agree. It's been called a trust machine by The Economist, and one of the key guys I know who's early in blockchain says it's all about truth. That you can just prove the existence of something, prove where it came from. It's just unless you have risks of where it's coming into the blockchain, you can just look it up. You know what really is real.
Can you give me anything that's more important than truth?
I'm just spitballing here, but if it is about truth, which I think it is, does that mean we're going to have a rival, different color blockchain that has alternative truth?
We'll go here and then
blockchain
we'll go back
wars.
Yeah, I have something for Steve. If you could correct me if I'm wrong, but the votes company that you invest in addition to the advantages that you mentioned. I believe it also will take the paper ballot out of play, so there'll be no more mistakes with paper ballots. But what really interests me is the person that has 2 or 3 jobs that has trouble getting to the voting booth, that the votes application, the blockchain application, once they register, there won't be any more of them trying to find something in the middle of the night to be able to put their vote in or to be able to be counted as a registered voter. Is that true?
That is true. That's right now. There's lots of laws around what's a certified voting machine, and actually, for legal reasons, they can't really just take over the whole election. They do the overseas and military voting, which was currently done where you just waive all sorts of privacy rights and send an email and secured. And then you have no idea whether it got hacked or not. In Utah, we do a ton of voting by mail, which is also very unreliable. You have no idea whether it got counted, and there's notorious errors where people get sent the wrong ballots or the wrong groups get them, and the U.S. Postal Service, bless them, are not the most reliable, So those things will all get better, and the thing that's cool about votes is it's biometric. So, you register and we know you're you. After, once you've proven you're you, we know you're you every time you vote.
I'm gonna try and squeeze 2 questions into a minute and a half, so go for it, and then we'll come back.
You've talked a lot about a very important word, trust, right? It's all built on trust. My understanding is the trust is built on the same cryptography that we were talking about yesterday as being vulnerable to quantum computers actually busting that trust. It seems to me that if quantum computing becomes low cost and widely available so that you can break this sort of cryptography, that the implications for blockchain are actually worse than just whether you can trust an individual web page. Does that stuff keep you guys awake at night, or is it like the 1859 solar flare event? You just kind of hope it doesn't happen.
Go for it.
I'm sorry to take all of these, but yes, I agree. And SHA-256 is probably vulnerable to quantum computing. We just believe that we'll be able to keep advancing that at the same time as quantum computing is advancing as well.
I hope you're right.
If I'm wrong, we'll all know, right?
Did you want to
Call
add to
me.
that?
Let Mark have the last question.
Mark, go for it.
So I think I'm among those people who feel like the internet was a really, really bad idea at this point. And paving, every highway to every business and every person so they can all be ripped off is not a genius move. And yet, there's been this idea behind it that if there were some way to authenticate on the net, that would help. So you almost build a new secret net inside the net, and you just start from scratch. When Bill said it's the first inning, it struck me, maybe this whole conversation is a first inning conversation. What if we just took the entire internet and put blockchain everywhere? So it was just integrated into everything on the net. If you're a Russian bot, screw you. Right?
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? And Facebook would be the first list.
Yeah. I'm for it.
CTO challenge next year. All right.
I like it.
I think we're out of time. So,
Just
do
to
you have an
respond,
answer?
yeah, I think
Okay.
it's going in that direction. That's Web 3.0. And that's what I hope it's so boring that we don't talk about it, but that's because everything on the internet is cryptographically secured in one way or another.
This is not the TCP/IP panel?
No.
All right.
It's just the way we do business, right? Yeah.
Thank you.